All right, so we are here this week to talk about Dotloop, and that is the transaction management solution that our office has chosen to support you guys. It is a wonderful all-in-one solution. It was one of the main reasons we went to this solution is because it incorporates your forms. It also incorporates your transaction management and file and task organization, as well as file compliance with broker review for the Department of Real Estate. And last, it incorporates your e-signatures into the software. So it really helps you become more efficient. And at the end of the day, I want to enable you guys to be as effective as possible so that you can go out and make the kind of income that you want. And I believe this software is one of those that will support you in doing that. So I'm going to do a quick screen share and go through what it looks like in the loop. I am sharing from my account, so you may notice some differences, but my hope is that what you will see is a good overview of what Dotloop can do for you. So the first thing I want to show you is not how to add a loop, but we are going to do a buyer test loop just for this particular file so that you guys have the ability to get an idea of what it will look like. I recommend for best practice that you label the files with the client's last name or first name and the address. So most of the time mine would look like Walker-123 Main Street. That's just how I do it. You can do it however you want, but it does allow you at a glance when you have a lot of loops going to sort or find or prioritize the files in an easy manner. So that's just my tip for you guys. Once you create your loop name, then you're going to select the template you want. For this example, we're going to look at a buying loop. I don't have any photos because this is a pre-offer. We're not sure what we're doing. But if we were making an offer on an actual MLS property, we would have entered the MLS number, and it would actually sync data from the MLS into your loop to help it make, again, to help save you some time with the efficiency. So for right now, I'm going to label this as a pre-offer, and I'm just going to assume right now that we're looking at properties that are 200,000 for giggles, okay? We don't have a closing date yet because we haven't gotten to that piece, but you can also include that. So we're going to view this loop, and I want to go over a couple of things at a high level, and then I want to take a step back and show you a couple of really neat tools you can use. What you'll notice in the loop is that you automatically have documents our brokerage has deemed required or fairly necessary in order of their importance and in order of likely how you would execute them in this file. You can add more documents, but just know that the AAR forms that are provided to us are already in here. So you'll see your buyer broker agreement, your agency, and your advisory right off the bat. Those things should be shared with any client you are working with before you even get into your real estate purchase contract. And so those are already here for you and you can use them. You have some other forms that you may want to send out ahead of time. But again, I'm going to let you guys do that on your own. We can also add documents by two options that I recommend. One is the templates. That gives you access to all the forms. You do have to scroll to the right MLS or the right form section. So if it's an AAR form, which is most typical, this is where you would get your addendums, your additional clause addendum, your buyer contingency addendums, things like that. So you can scroll. You can also search by name, but again, you still have to select the correct option on the left in order for the right files to show up. So if you needed to add any documents, it's as easy as clicking and then selecting copy, and it will put it right into your file. In this case, I will add an addendum for sake of what we're doing, just so you can see what happens. What I would recommend, and I see this a lot in reviewing the files, is that you not allow the documents just to pile up, but that you continue to try and keep them labeled appropriately and organized. And I know that's not always easy. When you click addendum, typically your addendum is going to come after all the other documents that you've already uploaded. So you can just drag it into place and keep it in order. And that way you have documents kind of in the date, again, of execution. So if I'm looking through an entire file, I'm not seeing an addendum as a broker before I actually see your purchase contract. It's a little confusing for me when I'm reviewing files to not know what the addendum is related to unless I've seen the other documents. So if you guys can help with that, I would appreciate it. Not necessary, but it certainly makes things a whole lot easier on my end. The other thing you need to do in here is to come in and relabel it. And here's why. I'm going to autofill for right now. This is addendum 1. We're going to just save it for right now. But these documents are not very clear when you get to multiple counteroffers or multiple addendums. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is actually relabel your addendum as the appropriate number, the same you do inside the document. Again, it just helps us to identify what order things came in so that for your file and for ours, we're able to take care of that and know what we should be looking at first. Any questions so far on that? Okay, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but again, I will open it up for questions. The next step that is really important, and this will save you a ton of time, is setting up the details for each property or each client. The more you do in advance in this details section, the more it will sync to every document you add and save you the time of hand typing the same things over and over and over again. So here's some high level things that I want to let you guys know about. You should see again some information up here. If you're using a MLS, you can again sync it to the MLS, but for right now, we're just using this as a sample. There's two things that you should see. Automatically, you should see yourself, and you're going to want to assign yourself as the buyer's agent. Again, that's going to ensure that all documents that have a buyer's agent signature or initial are going to insert you as the person that should be signing or initialing. So select that role that you are playing, and then that way you have it inserted correctly into the documents. You're also going to see the admin. That is our back-end office. You don't need to do anything with that. Because there is by default an administrative view so that we can review files for compliance, you also do not need to add me as a party to your file. I've seen that happening a lot. And again, I have to then go into your file and delete it. The reason why is when you add me as a party to your file, it's adding me as an agent, and your files then show up on my Loop dashboard. So I'm seeing them as if they're personal files I'm working with. I already have the administrative rights to look at the files, review the files, add information to them if I need to. So you again just don't need to add me. It's an extra step that's unnecessary. You do, however, need to add the parties to the file that are legitimate, and that would typically be people like the listing agent, your buyers, and the sellers. You're going to want to add the sellers in, even if you don't have an email address for them. And again, the reason being is that if you don't, you're going to have to hand type that seller name into every document. If you input them as a person here, then they will be added automatically. And if there are two, you are going to want to make two roles so that, again, their names are appearing correctly on the forms. So for instance, we're going to name this one Mike Test. We're going to assign a role as the seller. We don't have to fill in anything else. We just have to add them, and that way his name will now appear at the top of every addendum, every contract document, and you don't have to hand type it, okay? You can also add in yours. So let's say you're working with Mary Tester. This is where you're going to add her email so that you can send her electronic documents for signing. So if you do not have an email, you will have to sign in person and upload documents. In this particular instance, I'm just going to add her as the buyer. And again, I'm going to click add person. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. And she will now be a party to this file. Okay. The last person that you're going to want to add if you're not syncing these documents is the listing agent. And so again, we're going to go in and add listing agent. The important part here is that you actually add the license number and the company name, the phone number, and the email. This ID is also your MLS ID. So in fact, in this one, let's say that the MLS ID is JD230, and let's just pick one of these that are already in here. A license number for a sales agent will typically look like this. You can add the phone number. So we're gonna add in our phone number, and we're gonna add in the email, which is gonna be 123@123, okay? Once you've added all of these people to your file, again, the appropriate placeholders are going to be put into all the forms, which will save you a lot of time. The same thing occurs for adding property information. There's really only a couple of details you need. As you can see, you can search by address. So if you have an address, you can pull it up and it will try and match it. If you don't have an address, you can put an MLS number in and it will also pull up. So I didn't grab one for today, but let me just see if there's one that comes up. So here we go. We'll just say it's this one. This is not even in our, oops. Here we go. We'll grab one of these. So you can import the details and it will automatically show who the listing agent, the address, the price, and some other information. If you are adding a property by hand after the fact, what I would recommend is that you go into the tax records and grab the tax record, parcel ID, and the legal description. Those two fields are really the only fields that you need to fill in down here if you want. The rest of it is optional. But again, from a contract standpoint, those we know are going to be inserted over and over again. So if you go down here to the geographic description, you'll see the legal description is right here. And all you need to do is copy and paste. So that's going to be one of these kinds where it's a lot number or something, and it's going to show the Maricopa County records number as well. Once you've done that, it should insert it right into the purchase contract when we are in section 1 under the property. Any questions so far on how to set up the details for a loop? Okay. You guys are killing me with all your videos off. I don't know what kind of thoughts are going on, but here we go. So now you have a loop set up. You have details put in so that it appropriately logs each form with the correct stuff. And so now you can go into your actual forms and start filling it out. What you'll see is a pop-up automatically that's going to start to insert those details. You can add more. I will tell you again, if you have a title person, for instance, the beautiful thing is that it will insert all that title information into the title section. So again, it saves you the time and effort of typing if you already know these things up front. So in my case, I might choose for this one, we'll just say Judy. And you can see it pops right up. I'm going to put it in here. It's going to include her address, her email, her information. And I've now added her as a party to this file so that she's in here. Okay, you can do the same thing with others. For time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and scroll all the way down and just autofill. And now it's going to put in the information that was, again, in the system that we did in the details. So very nicely done. It helps save you, again, a lot of time. Doesn't mean you don't have to read through and double check things. Sometimes we, as you can see here, fat finger a spelling or something else. So make sure that you still look over things. It's really important. This is a contract and it needs to be accurate. So with that, you now have your contract and hopefully all of the other documents you need already easily set up with the correct parties inserted, the correct signature, and everything else that allows you to save a lot of time on getting started with writing an offer. And right now, we all know that time is of the essence. Offers are being presented very quickly, and we need to make sure that we have the opportunity again to get it out the door. And you can do this on your mobile device too. I didn't mention that, but it's really handy that we have this app, so you can download it, log in. You can absolutely start a loop if you need to before you leave for a showing, but you. What I really wanted to get into today as a tip for you guys in the 30 to 40 minutes we have here is how to use clauses to your advantage. So I'm going to scroll down to section 8, which is where we put in the clauses that we typically would include in a contract. So you guys would be familiar with this section, the additional terms. And this gives you a way to write in things that are not already addressed in the contract or to clarify or change default language in the contract. Anything that is written will supersede anything that was typed, okay? So when you click in here, you will have an edit text button. I'm, for the sake of time, going to insert a clause and show you how that works. And then I'm going to go back and show you guys how to do it on your own. So my hope is that you're following along. You pull up Dotloop and you're able to get to this and write in a few of your own so that you can, again, save some time as you're writing contracts in the future. Over here is a lovely little icon called Add Clause. What happens is it pops up a box for me to select and input some clauses that I may already have typed up. So I'm going to put these two, just for example. I'm going to put this one in, and that way we have one just to see. So you can see this one is a buyers are advised the property is located in the vicinity of Luke Air Force Base, a military airport. Disclosure is important, right? We're supposed to disclose when it's in the vicinity of an airport. So now we've just included that into the contract. Everybody is aware. It's no longer an issue. If I need to change it, I forgot the period on this, I just click on it, go in and change it, okay? I have the ability to insert additional clauses as well. So let's say I don't want to include that. Maybe this one is about age restrictions, and I'm inserting that because I already have it typed. You can type again as many of these as you need to and insert as many as you want. But for time, I just wanted to show you how you get to the clauses and where you would put them in the contract. Now that you know on section 8, you can use this icon to insert pre-typed language. I'm going to show you where to go in your own account so that you can create the clauses. And I'm going to share with you the clauses I have. So if you want to copy them right now, you can absolutely just type them into your own system and hopefully enjoy saving yourself a whole lot of time. This also helps, I know, with me in the review process, because when I see clauses written in a way that I've already approved, again, it expedites the process and it makes sure that we limit liability. Almost all of my clauses have been written specifically to avoid any ambiguity. If you see anything you think should be changed or updated, modified, let me know. I'm always open to feedback. I don't say that mine are perfect, but certainly if you don't have language, it's better to use something that we've already tested and used over and over again than to try and maybe come up with language, because we aren't attorneys and we need to make sure that we're being very careful when we write in language into a contract. So when you go back to your account, up at the top, you're going to see these icons. The first is your reports, so you can see how much business you're doing. The second is your loops dashboard. That's going to take you back to the page that shows all of your loops. And again, we've got our buyer loop that we're working on right here. You're going to see tasks that you can use. People is like a contact database. So anyone you've used and save into Dotloop are in here for future use. So if you use the same lenders or title people, the wonderful thing is they can be saved in here, and that way you can insert them more easily. And then you've got templates. And this is where you get to set up and design this system to work for you. So under templates, you can pre-type in documents that make sense for you. You can edit or increase certain, I'll say, items in the contract. So for instance, maybe the default for the Phoenix area is that almost every property has sewer, right? Maybe we go into the contract and we click the box that says sewer, knowing that by default, if there's a property that happens to be on an alternate system, that we need to uncheck mark that and check mark the other one. But because 95% of our contracts show that the properties are on a sewer connection, it saves you the time of check marking that box when you do that. So you can come in here and create all sorts of documents or templates that you want. At the bottom, this is where you get to your tasks. And right now, for what we're focusing on, where you get to your clauses. So I'm going to open up my clauses and you're going to start to see them populate here. Again, you can feel free to copy and paste. There are a couple that I want to highlight, especially given the environment we're in right now and the things that continue to happen when we are in a very hot market and often facing multiple offers. We talked about it a little bit before, and you guys have asked me, what is the language we use for an escalation? What is the language we use when we're dealing with making multiple offers on multiple properties? How do we handle some of these things? And so with that, I thought I would share the contract clauses that I use so that you guys can just copy and paste them right into yours and have them. So I'm gonna scroll all the way down here. And here is my escalation clause. You will see it right here. This is the main one that I use for clarification. And I know a lot of text. It's probably more text heavy than what most agents use. And I get that. Again, I write my things to make sure that there is no ambiguity. So first of all, I am qualifying that if the seller receives an offer, it has to be a bona fide written offer. It cannot be a verbal offer that they think they're getting. And it can't be something that, again, comes from someone who's not pre-qualified or able to actually present an offer, okay? It also states again that it's from a qualified buyer. I am making sure that the seller is not just going to leverage my escalation clause against me for someone who probably is not qualified. It also says with terms and conditions acceptable to the seller. That means if they get an offer, let's say for higher than my offer, but they had the term in there that the buyer wants to close escrow on a specific date that's not acceptable, and the seller has to counter, then this doesn't apply because that offer would not have been acceptable to the seller. Okay. If the buyer, for instance, requested a pre-qualification or required that all of the TVs and living room, furniture were included. Anytime there's something in the offer that's not acceptable, then this doesn't apply. It also outlines what the offer net price means. It means the contract less all the other expenses and buyer benefits. Again, it's just clarifying so that everybody is on the same page. In this example, it says that we are going to increase our price by $1,200 to be greater than the net proceeds of whatever the seller has already received. So that's a really important component because I see a lot of people doing 500 or 1,000. Nothing wrong with those, but again, from my experience, if you can make numbers odd or uneven, it's going to stand out, and it's likely going to mean if there are 3 people that do the same thing with $1,000 above, you're going to be the one that gives them the extra 200 that gets you your offer accepted. Does that make sense? So I want to just encourage you again, these are best practices that I have learned along the way, in addition to the language that you may want to copy into your clauses. We also are putting a cap on what we want our offer to go up to. So we are not going to pay $1,200 above any offer. We're only going to pay $1,200 above an offer and not to exceed, in this example, $321,000. Again, you'll notice I didn't put it at $320,000. That's something that a lot of people do. In this case, it should probably be $321,200. But again, just for the example, I want you guys to know I don't use even numbers whenever possible. It just helps you stand out amongst all the other offers coming in. And then it gives some caveats. If the seller decides to accept our offer, they do need to execute a counteroffer with the correct price. They also need to attach the evidence of the offer that they received that's proving that they're changing our offer terms because of something that they do have in hand that was acceptable to them. Any questions on that clause? Okay. If you don't have Dotloop open, you can always take a screenshot of this so that you can retype it. Again, just want to encourage you guys to take advantage of the things that have already been done for you so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. My goal is always to not just add value, but to save you a lot of time. Yeah.
Can you lower the screen just a little bit so that I can take a screenshot?
I have some of this in Word that I can also send out.
Okay, if it's in Word, I would appreciate it being sent out.
Can you send it to me too?
Yeah, no problem. I'll send it to everybody. I have some of these just in case for some of these reasons.
Thank you.
I have to copy this. It's been changed multiple times. So we can copy and paste, but again, the goal wasn't to make it more complicated. I just wanted to make sure you guys had the language. So it's a 1 paragraph. It's easy to copy. The next one that's really, really important is the appraised value issue. And that's been coming up a lot too. And I wanted to share with you this strategy. And again, give you the language so that you understand why or how we would use it. We have a lot of people right now waiving the appraisal contingency. I am not in agreement with that as a broker. Rick Mack, the AAR attorney, is not in agreement with that. There are certain contingencies in our contract in place to protect all parties. And the moment we start giving up all of those rights for our clients, it becomes questionable whether or not we were actually abiding by our fiduciary duties and advising and counseling our clients in a way that is beneficial to them. And so we have to be very careful about how we change the contract and what things we do include or exclude. So this is a way that I have worked with my clients to win several deals now. And I'll say another stopgap measure, which says we're not going to waive the appraisal, unlike a lot of other people, but we are going to pay you more than appraised value. And by paying you a little bit more than appraised value, you don't have to worry that someone's going to A, play games, or B, back out for another reason, and you end up having to disclose that there was an appraisal that came in lower to the next buyer. One of the things that I pitch to sellers who are potentially, or I should say listing agents, because I don't talk with the sellers, but the listing agents in this situation is that there are a lot of people who will say they will waive appraisal, but unfortunately we have found a couple of things to be true. And I speak from experience on the selling side because I'm dealing with it from both angles. On the selling side, what I do know is that unfortunately buyers will write in an escalation and a waiver of appraisal for sometimes $20,000, $25,000 above list price. But what they don't do is provide proof of funds. And unfortunately, if the appraisal doesn't come in, oftentimes they don't have the funds to make good on their promise. And so they will cancel, even if it means losing their earnest money, simply because they have no way to actually fulfill the terms of the contract. That's not fair to the seller. It's not playing this with integrity, but it happens a lot. The second issue is that there are several other contingencies. Oftentimes there are HOA contingencies that have to be fulfilled. There are loan contingencies that have to be fulfilled. And we all know there's inspections. Buyers can find another way out if they want to. The contract is very buyer friendly. And so I remind sellers that although they may be making it look good on paper to waive the appraisal contingency, what we know is that likely they can still get out of the contract and get their money back. And you're going to be left with nothing. And that's not fair to the seller. So what this does is it guarantees them that they make more than what the value is by an appraiser. And it again sheds light on the fact that we are not only playing fair, but we are doing what's right by everybody by making sure that that amount above appraised value is money that they have in their account and are able to pay. And so that's a reassurance. And that amount, again, can change. It can be a lot of different things. But from a coaching standpoint, I just want to share with you again, one of the strategies I'm using that's working very well, especially when coupled with an explanation of why we are using this strategy as opposed to doing what everybody else seems to be doing. Any questions on the appraisal issue?
I have a question on what you were just talking about. So for timing purposes, when you get a pre-qualification, typically you don't want it to exceed your offer price too much because you don't want the seller to know you can go up that much more. So how do you approach your client and say, if you're going to offer X amount above the price of another offer up to, do they just get another pre-qualification to show that?
So great question. I will tell you right off the bat, unlike the vast majority of our industry, play a little differently. I have never understood why we think we have to get multiple pre-qualification forms at different price points to cover a contract. The pre-qualification form was intended to show what the buyer is qualified for. And so if we submerge that number that they're qualified for to show a lesser amount, I think you're doing your buyer a disservice when you go up against other buyers who show that they're more qualified. And so
from a seller's point of view?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because one of the things I'm doing on the selling side is I'm coaching my sellers to look at the strength of the borrower. We want to make sure that they're good, that they are buying well within their means, that they are not maxing out their budget. And if you are like every other agent that puts a pre-qualification at the exact same purchase price you're making, it makes it look like that's all they can afford. And so if we get into a multiple offer situation, I either have to assume you can't actually qualify for the amount I'm going to counter you on, or I have to assume that you lied on your pre-qual and you have to get me a new one to show me that you actually are pre-qualified for more. Neither scenario is really ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my buyer's case, I asked for the maximum loan amount they can qualify for from their lender pre-qual. And I show that, and I specifically call it out in the introduction letter. And I state, my buyer is qualified for $405,000 on a loan. As you can see, they're putting down 10%. And in this scenario, they're looking at a loan amount of $300,000. They are a well-qualified, solid buyer. You can't find one more qualified than this other than maybe cash. And so I state that case and present my buyer in the best light possible, because again, my fiduciary duty to them is to help them win, right? And so I'm going to push that they are more than qualified and able to do better. It also stops the time that I would have to invest in going back to the lender and potentially through, sometimes I've had 3, 4 multiple offer situations, get a new pre-qualification letter at every stopping point to prove that my buyer's okay, which is just insanity. It's annoying to the lenders. They don't have the time for that. And it's annoying to us and all of the sellers who have to keep putting in their files all these new pre-qualification forms and keeping them separate and keeping record of them. So again, from a simplicity standpoint, I just prefer that we do it differently. Doesn't mean it's, again, right or wrong. Everyone can do it the way they want. Just know you're probably going to have some extra work if you have to go back and get a revised one because you didn't include a purchase price that would cover the escalation clause at minimum. If you're getting one that at least covers the escalation clause, you probably are not going to have to go back and get another one, because at that point, you know, either the seller maximizes that and agrees to your terms at the full price that you've escalated it to, or you lost out on the deal, and either way you didn't need a different pre-qual. Okay. So those are just some of the things that I would suggest. But again, I love that we can explain to sellers what the benefit is of working with us and our clients. And I think by doing it differently, we set that, we raise the bar, first of all, which is just important for me and my office. I want us to operate at a higher level than other agents. But I think secondly, it gets the attention of sellers in a different way because it is done differently. And it doesn't just seem so cookie cutter like everybody else.
Okay.
But if you're going to do something like this, it would be really wise to include a bank statement or something that shows that they have 5,000, 10,000, 2,500, whatever the amount is above the offer, so that the seller is reassured that you have the proof of funds to prove that you can actually pay that difference.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? This is great. Is this helpful to you guys to have the clause pre-typed? Yeah, it'll save you a lot of time. I want you to make use of the systems and tools we have. Again, my thought is if you set it up right from the get-go, it just, again, becomes a very efficient thing for you to be able to write up these offers quickly and to make sure that it's accurate. You don't stumble over typing the wrong thing or maybe changing the language every time, because it's just a standardized clause that you start to use. I have the same thing in my seller's listing presentation. There are several things that I do that are related to the listing agreements. And I'm happy to show those to you, but I wanted to first of all make sure that each of you had an opportunity to do the screenshot of the escalation and the appraisal value clause, because those are so prevalent right now. And we write them in a certain way to make sure that it makes sense for you. So these top ones are ones that I use most frequently. Right now with sellers, you'll see that it starts with an agent has permission to disclose offers. This is a standard of practice through our code of ethics that we are not allowed to disclose offers to customers or buyer brokers unless we are given written permission.
So in this kind of environment where we are likely to get multiple offers, if we want to be able to tell another buyer broker, yes, we have 3 offers. Please put your highest and best in by tomorrow at noon. You better have this clause in your listing contract. Now, is anyone going to know whether or not you have it? Is anyone going to question you on it? Probably not. But again, we're here to operate by the standards of our industry, and the code of ethics outlines that we can't do it unless we're given permission. So that goes into every listing contract I have. I also, in regards to the code of ethics and into our commissioner's rules, I have included this clause, which says myself as an agent, I am not required to present offers below a certain amount. How many times have you had a listing and you get 10 offers from investors that are like $50,000 below the list price, but it's cash and they'll close in 10 days? You know, they want to just see if they can get you to bite, see how motivated the seller is. I thankfully am not seeing that as much right now, but it was super prevalent last year. And so I discussed with my seller up front, what is the minimum amount you will take? You can change it from a percentage to an actual dollar amount and say, agent's not required to present offers below 300,000, because that is the bottom line they will take. But because our requirements say we have to present all offers, we then have to have something in writing from our sellers instructing us not to present those offers. In which case, again, it just saves us time, it saves them time. They don't have to sign off on a rejection. I don't have to keep emailing the other agent and say, no, they're not going to take your offer. So that's just one way that it saves everybody time. And it's another value that I provide to my sellers by doing something a little bit outside the box from everybody else. We also have this one in here. Again, I tout this as a time savings for my sellers, that I can change the MLS to pending and I can change it to close after it goes pending and after it closes. That should seem like common sense, right? But no, our MLS requires that we use a change form. And in that change form, you have to get the seller to sign off on it and put it back into the broker file to show that you changed the status of the property. That is something I see a lot of agents not doing. All fine and good as long as you have one of these clauses in your listing agreement, which prevents you from needing to use that change form. So I would recommend that you use something like that, because it, again, saves you time, saves them time, and honestly, it saves us as the brokerage time from reviewing forms that are unnecessary, in my opinion. The only time I really want to see a change form filled out is if there's a legitimate change, such as the listing date, the listing price, that it is temporarily off market, things that would be, I'll say, very obvious instructions that the seller needed to give us in order to have us make a real change. So that's just another one that I use frequently to save myself and my sellers some time. I have 2 more in here that are related to the listing. One is about price reductions, extending the listing agreement. Don't need to go into detail in it, but I have often had sellers agree to reduce the price and we're 10 days from the expiration of the listing agreement. And that's not a whole lot of time to get everything syndicated and new marketing out and see if we can get it sold at that new price. So for me, I have a clause in here that if they are agreeable to changing the price, that it is going to extend the listing agreement by 30 days so that we can appropriately market the property. That's just a neat clause that allows for you to have the appropriate time to market. The other is an early cancellation clause. I do charge a cancellation fee if someone wants to unilaterally cancel a contract. This is a bilateral contract. And as you guys know, you put a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort into marketing a home up front, and you don't get paid until it closes. So if the seller randomly decides they don't want to sell their home and they want to take it off the market, that is fine. We will honor that request, but they do have to pay a cancellation fee to reimburse me for a lot of my costs. May not reimburse me for everything, but it helps them rethink that strategy. If they are really on the fence, maybe they should just try and get it sold in the next 15, 30 days and not have to pay a cancellation fee. The last one I'll cover real quick before we say goodbye is this agent permission to start coming soon. As you guys know, last year our MLS implemented a coming soon status. Actually, it was a wonderful change to allow us to market a property but not allow it to syndicate out on the market. So it could generate some interest. When it's incoming soon, you are allowed to show the property if the seller agrees. But it's a great way to leverage the time that you're using to prep a home for sale while you're staging, cleaning up, maybe having some repairs done or getting photography completed, and have the home on the market, but not really on the market. It just lets other agents and other buyers with an MLS portal know that the property is coming to the market. You can also accept offers during this coming soon status. So it by no means limits you or your seller, but what it does do is it freezes the days on market, allows you to create or build some interest from possible buyers, and to do some work to get the home ready while you're doing it. And so I have this, again, included in my listing agreement so that you have the ability to get permission to start that. If you have specific dates, this is the one thing that's not in this, but if you have specific dates, I would encourage you to use them. So for instance, if you had a seller that, for instance, says, I would like you to start the coming soon marketing on October 17th, and I would like you to actively market it on November 3rd, that's when I'll allow showings. You should include those dates in this clause to say coming soon status to start this date, active status to start on this date. That is also in your input form. So it is duplicated there. But again, because this is the actual listing agreement with the instructions for our brokerage to start the listing services, I want us to be as, I'll say, clear and concise as possible if there is specific dates that are already agreed to. And it's not just open-ended as in the seller says, I'm getting painting done and then flooring next week, and I'll call you if we've got the moving boxes out and maybe have you listed the week after, right? Those kinds of situations, we don't really want to put dates in this because it might end up with a delay. You might have a seller that says, no, I'm not quite ready. I need 2 more days. Any questions on those listing clauses that you can have and include in your listing agreements? All good? Okay. Well, that was what I had for today. I wanted to show you not only where to go in Dotloop to set up your own set of clauses, but also share ones that I use that I think will be of value to you. Hopefully it saves you a lot of time. Hopefully it maybe wins you an offer that you wouldn't have won otherwise. Hopefully it helps you solidify your relationships with your sellers when you present them some time savings that maybe they wouldn't have realized otherwise because you think ahead and plan for the contingencies that typically happen in a sale. So that's all I had for today to get you guys up and running with clauses.
I have 2 questions.
Sure,
So,
go ahead.
so the third one, the third clause, just want to make sure I hear you correctly. Are you saying if we use this clause, we do not have to fill out the change form and sold form anymore?
Yep, the seller is essentially giving you permission upfront to make the change of the MLS status, so you don't have to get permission on a change form to change the status.
Okay, including the sold form?
Yeah, that's what that is.
Okay,
So
and
when you go into, I'll show you a sample in a loop just so that you guys can see it. I have a test one for sellers, I believe. So, so in here we have an AZ sold change form that is supposed to be used for all sorts of things, which again, not everybody is using. But you'll see we have these different things in here that are meant to be helpful. So see page 2 for entry of pending, sold, and leased information. So this is where you would typically go to page 2 and you would put in this stuff. Here's the status, here's the selling, here's the contract date, here's the close of escrow, loan types, all the things you have to actually input into the MLS, correct, when you make that change? And you're supposed to use this section to change the listing to pending, and then use this section to change it to closed. And what I'm not seeing are these being submitted for review, which tells me you guys aren't using them, which tells me you need the clause in your listing contract. Because if you're not going to use the appropriate forms, you need to have permission not to use the form from your seller.
Okay, the second one is the first clause. I may missed it when you said it. What does SP space 1-15 mean?
That's a standard of practice. So
Okay.
when you are dealing with code of ethics, on all the code of ethics that they have, they call it standard of practice. So it's an SP and it's labeled with a number so that it's easily identifiable. When
Okay.
you have a code of ethics violation and someone files a complaint against you, they have to reference the code of ethics standard that you breached. And that's why we're using that reference number in our contract.
Okay.
So
Do
if
you,
you're not familiar with it, I would advise you guys to go and look up the code of ethics and read through it again. It's a really fascinating document. It's got a lot to it, and it's a really good thing to keep refreshed on it because you do not want to breach our code of ethics.
do you use more than one clause when you sign the seller agreement?
Show you a sample of one just for you guys to look at. So this is a listing that I have right now. It was under contract. Here's my listing agreement, which you can see was already signed by everybody. And if I scroll all the way down, just like in section 8 on our purchase contract, we have section 27 for additional terms. And here's all of those terms I just spoke about. I have permission to notify multiple offers, permission not to present low offers. I can change the status. I have the ability to do a price reduction and extend the listing term. If they cancel early, they have a fee, and I have permission to start the coming soon. All of that is included in my listing agreement.
Okay.
So I absolutely use everything I teach you guys. And again, part of the benefit of having a working broker is that I have relevant data to share with you based on experience so that you guys can have and take advantage of these things that you may not have seen on your own. But absolutely, I use these every time. Any other questions?
No.
Here's what I will ask of you guys now. Here's how you can help me. There are a lot of times when I'm reviewing contracts and I am trying to read through them, but I don't always read every section because, again, if the buyer and seller have agreed to terms, or if you and your client have agreed to terms, I don't necessarily need to approve the terms. I'm just making sure that the document is complete and accurate and executed. So if you are in the marketplace and you have a maybe an offer come your way on a listing, or you're writing an offer and you get a counter back or a copy of, again, because of this buyer clause that says you have to show us a copy of another executed contract. So maybe you get a copy of a different contract and you see something interesting in it, I would love to have you share it with me. I am always looking to add new clauses to what we do that protects us, protects our clients, adds valuable services, saves them time. And so be on the lookout for things. It's really wonderful. One of the things that I am looking at creating right now is also an additional services addendum. There's a lot of brokerages that, of course, have affiliated relationships with companies and so on. And I've seen them come across my desk a lot of times, but haven't really used them. And I would love to have one just on file as a blank template in case we decide to do that. I have also got, as a separate addendum, as you guys know, a couple of the indemnities. So we have the home warranty indemnity that, again, that language isn't in the contract, but it's a separate document that we've created. And then we have one that is specific to outlining the age-restricted communities. And it's pretty thorough. Although if you're in an age-restricted community and it's not covered in there, I'd love to know about it. But it covers a lot of the communities. And what I would say is if you guys want to have something like that, I'll show you, I believe, where we can go. Let me go back to my buyer template. Here. So if I add a document, I can add it from 2 places. So I can add it from our master folder. So we have a folder of documents, and you'll see right here, it's the active adult community. This is also in the Dotloop team folder. So you could always go browse for it on your home computer and do it. But for time's sake, I'm going to import the one we've already got saved in here for you so you can see it. I'm again going to drag and drop it into the appropriate order below the other addendums so it's not just cluttering up the top. And I'll open this and show you. This is our active adult community addendum. And you can see that it has some information, but then what it does is it starts to go into specific communities. So this one covers Sun City, Sun City West, Sun City Festival, Portobello, Arizona Traditions, Sun Air Estates, Ventana Lakes. This one covers Westbrook Village because it's very different than the others. This one covers Sun City Grand because it's different. Each of these have different restrictions. Here's Trilogy at Vistancia. If again, you run into communities that are not covered on here, just let me know. I would like to add them if the appropriate language is already covered. And if not, I would like to add an additional paragraph that makes sure it's also covered so that it's an easy checkbox for you guys to say, yep, our buyer is buying in this community and here's the restrictions they are now aware of because we have made sure to communicate it to them. Okay, so these are some of the fun additional forms that we have included in your Dotloop file that you can import and use at any time. And again, always let me know if you find something isn't up to par, doesn't cover, isn't clear enough. We're always making sure we keep improving these, and there's always going to be new communities being added. So we want to keep this up to date as much as possible and replace the form as needed. Did y'all learn something from Dotloop training today? Awesome.
Yep.
That is the goal, getting better every day. So thanks for attending. I do appreciate your time. It's nice to show up and have smiling faces that are giving me some attention and making sure that you're digging in and learning. If you have ideas or suggestions for other classes, let me know. I want to make sure I continue to bring stuff to you that's relevant and that I make use of your time so that it feels valuable to you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.